It started with a sound, the soft crash of waves against the pier and the faint hum of a radio from the cafe across the street. I remember thinking how peaceful it all felt, and how, somehow, peace always made me restless. That was the morning I first saw her. She was sitting by the window of the cafe, hair tied loosely, reading something she didn't seem to be paying attention to. Every few seconds, her eyes drifted toward the sea, as if waiting for it to say something back. I had no reason to notice her, but I did. Maybe it was the way the light hit her face, that golden, sleepy morning light that made her look almost unreal. Or maybe it was the quiet sadness in her expression, the kind that feels too familiar to ignore. The first time we spoke, it wasn't really a conversation. The cafe was crowded, and I'd taken the table next to hers. The waiter mixed up our orders. Her tea landed in front of me, my coffee in front of her. She smiled when she noticed. Seems like the sea isn't the only thing confused today. Her voice was soft, steady, like a note that lingers after a song ends. I laughed, apologized, and she waved it off. But for some reason, that moment stayed with me longer than it should have. Over the next few days, I kept running into her, at the market, at the small bookstore by the harbor, on the evening path near the pier. Always unplanned. Always brief. Once, she was buying flowers, white lilies. She caught me watching her and said, "You look like someone who doesn't buy flowers often. Do people still buy them for themselves?" I asked. "Only when they've stopped expecting them from others," she said, smiling faintly before walking away. I thought about that all night. It became a quiet pattern, her presence in the periphery of my days. Not enough to call it connection, but too much to call it coincidence. Every time, she'd say something small, simple, but it would linger. Like salt on skin long after the sea's gone quiet. One evening, I saw her sitting alone on the edge of the pier. The sky was dimming, pinks fading into gray, and she had her shoes beside her, feet touching the water. I hesitated but went closer. "Isn't it cold?" I asked. She didn't turn, just smiled toward the horizon. Sometimes it's good to feel something cold. It reminds you you're still here. There was a kind of loneliness in her that didn't ask to be fixed. Just seen. We talked for a while, or maybe we didn't. I remember her telling me she used to live in the city, that she moved here after everything got too loud. She didn't say what everything meant, and I didn't ask. Some silences feel sacred. Before leaving, she asked, "You come here often?" "Not really. Just when I don't know where else to be." "Then I guess we'll keep meeting," she said quietly. And we did. After that night, I started timing my walks around when she might be there. Not on purpose. At least that's what I told myself. She became part of the rhythm of this place. The sound of the sea, the smell of rain before it falls, the quiet hum of someone's presence you start to count on without realizing it. And still, I didn't know her name. Not yet that I started seeing her everywhere after that. Or maybe I just started noticing everywhere she could be. She had a way of blending into the town, like she belonged to it in some unspoken way. The cafe, the flower stall, the narrow lanes that smelled of seaweed and rain. All of it seemed to hold traces of her. The next time I saw her, it was raining lightly. The kind of rain that doesn't soak you, just lingers on your skin like a memory. She was standing under the awning of a small bookstore, flipping through a used poetry book. "You again," she said, her lips curving just slightly. "Maybe it's fate," I said, then immediately regretted how it sounded. She raised an eyebrow. "Or maybe just a small town." "Yeah, that too." She looked back down at her book, but I could see her smile deepen just enough to make the air between us warmer than the drizzle. We talked about the sea that day, how it always looked different but never changed. She said she liked the idea of something being endless, but still capable of forgetting. "The sea forgets everything," she said, "even the people who once thought it belonged to them." There was a story behind her words. I could hear it in the small cracks of her voice. But I didn't ask. Not yet. We started running into each other more often, at the market, the docks, the park near the lighthouse. Always casual, always brief. But each meeting left something behind. A look, a pause, something neither of us named. One evening, I found her sketching at the end of the pier. The tide was low, and the wind had softened. I sat beside her without asking. She didn't mind. "You draw?" I asked. "Only when I can't say things out loud." "Is that often?" "Lately, yes." She showed me her sketch, the sea, the lighthouse, a small figure standing alone at the edge of the water. I asked if that was her. She shook her head. It's whoever's left when everyone else stops waiting. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. I just sat there, listening to the slow pulse of the waves beneath the wood. When she finally packed up to leave, she said something almost like a whisper. Funny thing, isn't it? The way some strangers start to feel less strange. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of rain against the window felt different, softer, closer. I kept replaying her voice, her words. A few days later, I saw her again, this time at the cafe. She was sitting in her usual spot, reading. I took the seat opposite hers. She looked up. You really are persistent. I like familiar faces. And how do you know I'm familiar? Because you feel like something I'll remember. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The cafe was filled with small sounds, spoons clinking, a doorbell chiming, rain tapping against glass. But somehow all of it faded. She looked at me, really looked, and said quietly, You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? Because they stay, even when people don't. She gathered her things and left before I could reply. Her words hung in the air long after she was gone. When I stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The sea was calm again, like it had never stormed at all. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had begun. Something small. Something I couldn't stop even if I tried. It happened slowly, like the tide creeping in when no one's watching. Days stretched into weeks, and our chance meetings stopped feeling like chance. There was no plan, no promise, just the quiet rhythm of two people orbiting the same silences. One afternoon, I saw her sitting near the old lighthouse, sketchbook in her lap, hair caught by the wind. I almost turned back, but she saw me first. You always find the quiet places, she said, without looking up. Or maybe I find you in them. She smiled faintly, eyes still on her page. That sounds like something a poet would say. I'm not one. No, but you look like someone who wants to be understood. That line, someone who wants to be understood, sat with me. I wanted to tell her that I didn't just want to be understood. I wanted her to be the one who did it. She patted the space beside her, wordlessly inviting me to sit. We watched the waves together, each breaking the same way, yet somehow different every time. After a long silence, she said, I used to come here with someone. He hated the sea. Why? He said it made him feel small. I liked that about it. There was something fragile about the way she said it, like she was sharing a memory she hadn't touched in years. Do you still think about him? I asked. Sometimes. Mostly when I forget not to. What happened? She hesitated, then closed her sketchbook gently. Life. It happens, doesn't it? The way she said it, calm, almost kind, told me everything she didn't. We sat quietly after that. The air smelled like salt and fading light. I wanted to say something, anything that might make her stay in that moment longer. But she spoke first. You're too young to understand what loss feels like, she said softly. Maybe not, I said. Just not the same kind. She looked at me then, really looked. For a heartbeat, the world around us blurred. The sea, the gulls, the wind. Everything faded into the space between her eyes and mine. I could have sworn she wanted to look away, but she didn't. Instead, she smiled, small and uncertain. Don't look at people that way, she said. It makes them believe things they shouldn't. I don't think I can help it, I said quietly. She exhaled, slow and heavy. You'll understand one day. Some stories aren't meant to start. They just pass through you. But I didn't believe her. Because in that moment, it already felt like ours had started. Quietly, softly, and without permission. Later that week, she came into the cafe while I was there. It was raining again, the kind of coastal rain that turns the air into mist. She was soaked, hair clinging to her shoulders, cheeks flushed from the cold. I stood to offer her my jacket, but she waved it off, laughing lightly. If I take it, I'll have to see you again to return it. Maybe that's the point. She looked at me, and for a moment, her laughter faded. Something passed between us, a wordless knowing, like both of us could already see the ache waiting on the other side. When she finally left, she turned at the door. You shouldn't wait for people who don't stay, she said. Maybe I'm not waiting. Maybe I'm just here. She didn't answer, just smiled, that small, tired, devastating smile, before disappearing into the rain. That night, the sea was rough. The kind of night where the waves crash hard enough to be felt from the shore. I lay awake, listening, thinking of her voice, her eyes, her unfinished goodbyes. And I knew. I was already too deep. It began with a storm. The kind that swallowed the horizon whole and turned the air electric. The cafe had closed early, the streets half flooded. I was halfway home when I saw her, standing by the railing near the lighthouse, coat flapping wildly, face lifted toward the sky, like she was daring the rain to take her. I called her name, though I still wasn't sure if I had the right to. She turned, eyes shimmering under the stormlight. "You shouldn't be here," she shouted over the wind. "Neither should you." We met halfway, our shoes sinking into wet sand. The sea was roaring behind us, waves breaking too close, too loud. "I like storms," she said. "They make me feel alive. Or maybe they make you feel something you've been trying not to." Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, more like recognition. "You're getting too good at seeing things you shouldn't." I wanted to look away, but I didn't. "Maybe I just see you." She laughed, soft, almost broken. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I might start believing them." That silence afterward was heavy, the kind that hums under the skin. Rain slid down her face, catching the light, making her look both fierce and unbearably fragile. "Why do you keep coming back?" she asked. "I don't know. Maybe I feel calm around you. Maybe I like the quiet. And if I told you I'm not someone to feel calm around, then I'd say it's already too late." For a moment, her expression softened. The resistance in her eyes flickered. She looked at me like someone remembering a song they once loved but stopped singing. "I'm not who you think I am," she whispered. "I don't think you're anyone else," I said. "That's the point." She shook her head. "You're young. You think everything broken can be fixed with love." "Maybe not fixed," I said quietly. "But maybe it doesn't have to stay broken." She took a step closer. I could feel her breath, uneven, trembling. "Don't do this." "I'm not doing anything." "Yes, you are. You're making me feel something I promised myself I wouldn't again." And there it was, the truth neither of us could carry. The wind howled harder, sea foam spraying against the rocks, as if the whole world was warning us to stop. But neither of us moved. For one long, suspended heartbeat, I thought she might close the distance between us. I could almost feel her warmth through the storm, her pulse in the air. But then she turned away. "I can't," she said, voice barely audible. "You remind me too much of who I was, before I learned what endings cost." I wanted to reach out, to tell her that I didn't care, that I wasn't afraid of endings. But the word stuck, because maybe she was right. Maybe we were already standing inside one. She started walking back toward town. I followed her for a few steps, then stopped. The storm began to fade, leaving only the soft hiss of the rain. Before disappearing into the mist, she turned once more. "You'll forget me," she said. "One day, the sea will teach you how." I didn't answer. I just stood there, drenched and weightless, watching the tide erase our footprints one by one. But even as the waves washed the shore clean, I knew some things aren't meant to be forgotten. Some storms stay long after the sky clears. After the storm, the town returned to its rhythm. Quiet mornings, gulls circling the pier, fishermen shouting across the docks. But something between us had changed. She still came to the cafe, though never at the same hour. Sometimes I'd see her reflection in the window before she noticed me, her face softer in the glass than it ever was in person. Other times, she'd walk past without looking in, and I'd pretend not to care. But the truth is, I'd memorized her. The sound of her shoes on wet pavement, the faint scent of rain and jasmine that followed her, the way she always hesitated before opening a door, like she was giving herself one last chance to turn away. And every time she walked in, it felt like something in me started breathing again. She'd order the same thing, black coffee, 2 sugars she never stirred, and sit by the window that faced the sea. I'd find an excuse to be near, pretending to clean a table or fix the blinds, but really just listening. It was strange how much silence could say. "Storms are over for a while," I said one morning, trying to sound casual. "Good," she replied, eyes still on the waves. "I like calm. You don't seem like someone who does." She smiled, just barely. "Maybe I'm learning." That smile stayed with me all day, not the curve of it, but the effort behind it. Like it cost her something to be gentle again. Days blurred. We became 2 people pretending not to orbit the same quiet. She'd read in the corner. I'd make coffee I didn't drink. And sometimes our eyes would meet. Not by accident. Not anymore. And that was enough. But there were moments when distance felt heavier than absence. Once, after closing, I found her outside, leaning against the wall under the dim streetlight. The air smelled of salt and something sharp, regret, maybe. "Do you ever feel like you missed something?" she asked suddenly. "Every day," I said. She nodded, like that was the answer she expected. "It's strange, isn't it? How life keeps moving, even when you're not ready to. Maybe it's supposed to. Maybe we're the ones who keep looking back." She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw a flicker of something raw. Not love, not yet. Just the ache of it waiting to happen. "You shouldn't wait for people like me," she said softly. "I'm only passing through. Then I'll just walk slower." Her breath caught. For a second, she almost laughed, but it came out as a sigh. "You make things sound easier than they are. Maybe they are easier. We just make them harder because we're scared." "And what are you scared of?" "Of not saying what I mean," I said. "Before it's too late." She looked away, whispering, "It's already too late." The silence after that felt like the ocean between us. Endless, restless, familiar. She left without saying goodbye. The door closed softly behind her, and the small bell above it rang once. A sound so light it almost hurt. For days, I didn't see her. The cafe felt emptier than usual. Even the regulars noticed. One of them asked if I'd lost something. I said, "Not yet," though it felt like a lie. Every morning, I'd glance at the window where she used to sit, half expecting her reflection to return, half praying it wouldn't. And then, one evening, as the sun bled into the water, I found something folded beneath her old seat. A napkin, stained with coffee, her handwriting faint but careful. It said only 3 words, "Don't wait forever." I read it until the ink blurred. Maybe she meant it as mercy, but it felt like a promise. She stopped coming altogether. No warning, no slow fade, just absence. The kind that hums in every empty chair, every unclaimed cup, every unspoken word. At first, I told myself she was busy, or maybe she'd gone to visit someone. But as the days stretched into weeks, excuses turned into habits. I started making her coffee every morning, just to pour it down the drain by noon. That corner table still smelled faintly like her perfume, rain and jasmine and something I never could name. I wiped it clean each night, then let the dust gather again by morning. It felt like a ritual, a quiet rebellion against forgetting. Sometimes I'd walk by the beach after closing, past the narrow road that led to her house. The curtains were always drawn now. The mailbox still had her name, Evelyn Hart, in neat, fading letters. I never knocked. I told myself it wasn't my place. But I kept walking by anyway. One evening, as the tide rolled in heavy and slow, I saw her down by the rocks. She was standing barefoot, her skirt brushing the foam, hair wild from the wind. She looked lighter somehow, not happier, just resigned, like someone who finally accepted the weight she couldn't put down. When she turned and saw me, she didn't flinch. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I live here," I replied. "You're the one disappearing." She smiled, tired, small. "Maybe that's what I'm good at." I wanted to ask why. Why the sudden distance? Why the silence? Why the note? But the words tangled in my throat. Instead, I asked, "Are you leaving?" Her gaze dropped to the waves. "There's a train on Sunday. My sister's sick. I'll be gone for a while." "How long?" "I don't know." The air between us felt heavy with everything unsaid. The waves crashed softly, as if to fill the silence. "I wish you'd told me," I said. "Would it have changed anything?" "Maybe not," I admitted. "But it would have mattered." Her eyes softened. Guilt, affection, maybe both. "You've been kind to me," she said quietly. "More than I deserved." "That's not true. Maybe not for you. But it is for me." The sun was sinking, the light breaking into gold and gray across her face. She looked beautiful, not the kind you notice, but the kind you remember. "I never wanted to stay here," she said after a long pause. But somehow, it started to feel like I already had. I wanted to tell her I knew, that I'd felt it too, the stillness that only made sense when she was near. But the words wouldn't come out right. So I just said, "Then maybe it's home now." She stepped closer, the water brushing against her ankles, her voice barely a whisper. "You don't understand. Home isn't always where you belong. Sometimes it's where you leave the parts you can't carry anymore." The breeze caught her hair, and for a second, everything stilled. The sea, the wind, even time. Her hand brushed against mine, a fleeting touch that burned more than any goodbye could. Then she turned and walked away. I stood there until the tide crept to my feet, until her figure disappeared into the fog. When I finally looked down, something small and silver glinted in the sand. Her bracelet, the one she always wore. A thin band with a single pearl. I picked it up, feeling the warmth still trapped in the metal. That night, I placed it beside her empty cup on the cafe counter. The moonlight caught it just right, soft, almost forgiving. I didn't cry. I just sat there, watching the light fade. And for the first time, I realized what it means to lose someone who was never yours to keep, that it's been 11 months since she left. The cafe still smells of salt and roasted beans, but the air has changed, lighter, quieter, more honest somehow. I open early now, just before dawn. The world feels easier at that hour, when the sea hasn't yet decided what kind of day it's going to be. The stool by the window remains empty. I don't move it anymore. It faces the same view she liked. The harbor, the little fishing boats rocking with the morning tide, the gulls circling above the rooftops. People still come and go, but sometimes I catch myself watching the door without meaning to. And every time the bell rings, my chest forgets how to breathe for just a second, until I see a stranger's face and remember. Her bracelet still sits behind the counter, tucked in a small glass jar. I keep it beside a folded napkin with her handwriting on it. It says, "Don't forget the quiet things." For months, I didn't know what she meant. I do now, because it's in the quiet things that she still lives, in the soft clink of cups, the smell of rain before it starts, the sound of the sea brushing against the pier. In the way I reach for 2 mugs before I remember I only need 1. In the way I still make her coffee every morning, black, 1 sugar, no milk, and pour it down the drain like a ritual. Sometimes I think she might walk back in, looking older, windburned, maybe still carrying that same small smile. But most days, I don't wait for her anymore. Most days, I just let the sea be the only thing that comes and goes. Last week, a letter arrived. No return address, just a simple postmark from another coastal town miles north. Inside, 1 line written in her unmistakable hand. I still stop by the water every morning. You'd like the view here. No explanation. No signature. Just that. And it was enough. That evening, I closed early and walked to the beach. The sky was bruised with twilight, the kind of color that doesn't last long but stays in your memory forever. The tide was out, leaving wet streaks of light on the sand. I sat on the same rocks where we'd stood that last night, the bracelet still warm in my pocket. I could almost hear her, not her voice, exactly, but the echo of her silence. The way she used to pause before speaking, the way her gaze softened when she didn't have the right words. For a moment, it didn't hurt anymore. It just existed, like the sea itself, endless, familiar, always returning but never the same. Maybe that's what she meant when she said some places hold what we can't carry. Maybe we left parts of ourselves here. Her quiet laughter, my foolish hope, the smell of coffee that refused to fade. A couple walked by, holding hands, talking softly. I smiled without meaning to. Love looks different for everyone, I guess. For some, it stays. For others, it lingers in the spaces between waves, in the pauses, in the memory of mornings that never really ended. As I stood to leave, the sea breeze carried that faint scent again, rain and jasmine. For a second, I thought it was her. But when I turned around, it was just the air, just the sea remembering for me. I let the bracelet fall into the water. It caught the last light of the setting sun before sinking beneath the waves. Walking back up the shore, I felt lighter. Not healed, not over it, just at peace. Some people pass through your life like storms, loud, brief, unforgettable. But some come like tides. They touch everything quietly, then retreat, leaving behind patterns you can't see but always feel. And when I locked the cafe that night, the world outside smelled like salt and endings. Yet somehow, it didn't feel like loss anymore. It felt like gratitude.